Okay, so electronic business systems, the major topic. So this is a recap of what we learned as role of information systems. As you can recall, um, we learned that role of information systems is mainly categorized into three, that pyramid we learned. So at the base level, it's basically the day-to-day transactions. That's the focus of today's topic. Then we have the other two layers are on the top, decision-making systems or decision support systems and expert systems. So today we are going to discuss in detail about the bottom layer. So what is a transaction? A transaction is any business-related exchange, such as a payment to an employee, a sale to a customer, or payment to a supplier. Transaction is something that you deal between these parties, an employee. Uh, as a company, you may make a payment to an employee. If you're doing a sale to a customer, it might be you are generating some receipt or you receive something from the customer. On the other hand, if it is a supplier, you do a payment to the supplier, right? That is what we call as transaction. Another alternate explanation would be transactions are events that occur as part of doing business, such as sales, purchases, withdrawals, refunds, and payments, right? So basically, they are events. They are separate, discrete events that we do uh, as part of the transaction, as part of the dealing between the different parties. So TPS is something that can organize all these activities. So it's an organized collection of people, procedures, software, databases, and devices used to process and record business transactions. We have seen this definition also sometime earlier. So just keep in mind what is a TPS at a fundamental level. Right. Going further, so what do TPSs do? They capture and process the detailed data necessary to update records about the fundamental business operations of the organization, the very base operations of an organization. Now, for example, certain things are given here, certain type of areas where transaction processing systems are being implemented. Order entry, inventory control, payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and general ledger. So we'll briefly try to understand what these areas are in the following slides. Just to give you an overview, order entry is something where as a customer you make some orders. It could be online, it could be you go to a salesperson or some person in the company to make the order. That area is called order entry. So you need an interface and you need a system to capture that. Inventory control, as you know, it's all about stocks. Whatever you have in your warehouse or storage facilities, uh, maintaining information about that. Payroll is about, salary, wages of employees, maintaining that. So sample snapshot, you can see how a basic interface of a payroll system would look like, where you can enter the employee name or you can view the employee name, all the additional stuff related to their work, right? How many hours they have worked or for the week, for the month, etc. And then you can generate a pay slip. So that is what we call a payroll system. Accounts payable, accounts receivable is something related to purchase. So accounts payable means the money we might be able to need to pay to others. Like as a company, we may be liable to pay to external parties. So that area is called accounts payable. So we may have details about different type of uh, our clients or our suppliers basically, and we may have information about when and uh, which date we need to pay the money. Similarly, accounts receivable is the other way around. The money that we need to receive from others. So there might be some customers who have taken or purchased for loan. So controlling that area is accounts receivable. Then you have general ledger. General ledger is a common place where we record all the transactions, accounts payable, receivable, etc. Everything in one place. That's called general ledger. So the input to these systems includes basic business transactions such as custom orders, purchase orders, receipts, time cards. When it comes to payroll, it is time cards, invoices, and customer payments. So we'll be discussing the activities. So in a TPS, in any kind of TPS, there will be these 6 activities, starting from data collection, data editing, data correction, data processing, data storage, and finally document production or reporting. Right. So these 6 activities you'll have to keep in mind. It is the core functionality of a TPS. So the result of processing business transactions is that the organization's records are updated to reflect the status of the operation at the time of the last processed transaction. Right. The result of processing business transactions is that the organization's records are updated to reflect the status of the operation at the time of the last processed transaction. That means what they're saying is, after you process a business transaction, so a business transaction will go through all these 6 steps. So what we are trying to achieve is, after doing all these activities, we want to keep our status of a database or some information in the organization up to date, so that when a new transaction is coming, it will start from the previous point, right? So this is the whole, this is the result of what we expect from a TPS. So as soon as these activities are over, we keep the system ready for the next transaction to happen properly. So a TPS also provides valuable input to management information system, decision support system, and knowledge management systems. So as you see, a TPS serves as the foundation to the higher level systems in the pyramid. So I told, in the pyramid, our second layer is about decision making, third layer is about expert or knowledge systems. So TPS provides the foundation. It is the very basic level of capturing information and feeding data to the higher level information systems. So that's what is mentioned here. To easily understand, this is a snapshot from the book. If you look at this block structure here, TPS is at the foundation. It serves as an input to the MIS or the DSS, and then these systems serve as input in turn to the knowledge management systems for strategy making. So if you look at some characteristics along these different information systems, if you talk about information is much more available towards the top of these blocks, and data is more available at TPS. That means you have less clarity when you are capturing data at TPS. You don't have proper meaning of information when you gather or capture data at the TPS. So the amount of clarity is getting higher towards the top. That's why you say more information is more towards the top. When you look at data is more towards the TPS. Then support for routine operations. Now, day-to-day routine means like day-to-day or regular operations. TPSs and MISs support more, but when you go to strategic systems and all, it may not support the routine operations. Similarly, about decision support, yes, it is very less at the TPS, but above the block, it becomes more supportive. Talking about input and output, it is more related to the routine operation. So you will have more inputs, more outputs generated at the bottom layers. As you go towards the top, you will have very rare input. Once in a while, you will look at a annual report or something like that. So it's going to happen less frequently. Talking about complexity, sophistication, and analytical capabilities, obviously in a TPS you can't expect that, but when you go towards knowledge management systems, the complexity is more, you can do more analysis and other sort of things, right? So this is how you have to understand. I think if you remember this one picture, I think there are many questions related to this. I mean, not from the picture itself, but it comes in sentences in the past papers, you'll notice. Basically, it's very straightforward if you understand the different characteristics of what a TPS and MIS, DSS and the knowledge management system. It's easy to relate it. So keep that in mind. Right. Further, traditional transaction processing methods and objectives. So what we expect from a what are the available options in TPS? So we have these batch processing systems. It's a form of data processing whereby business transactions are accumulated over a period of time and prepared for processing as a single unit or batch. Right? Accumulated over a period of time. That means we keep on adding transactions over time. Accumulate means kind of adding up. So a batch processing system is something you collect. First you wait for many transactions to happen and then you execute it as one. You process it as one unit or you call it as a batch. The essential characteristic of batch processing system is the delay between an event and the eventual processing of the related transaction to update the organization's records. Right? So that is a one of the fundamental characteristics, I would say, for batch processing system relating to the other systems. It's the delay. That means the moment you trigger something in the system, if that system is following a batch processing operation, but the moment you trigger an operation, like say it's a button push or it's some joystick you're moving, the reaction or the related transaction doesn't happen immediately. Maybe it will collect all the information needed and then process it at a later time. That is the characteristic. So that delay is there. For many applications, batch processing is an appropriate and cost-effective approach. For example, payroll transactions and billing are typically done via batch processing. Right? Let's look at these two examples. Why they are categorizing payroll and billing under batch processing. Now, if you take payroll, normally what happens is payroll, you give it either end of the day. If it's a daily wage employer, you will do it at the end of the day. If it is a monthly salary, you will give the salary at the end of the month. So until that, you keep on adding the hours. So the system will be accumulating all the data. And let's say if it's a daily wage thing, you have to calculate. So end of the day only, you know how many hours the person has worked and how much time he has taken, like interval, or how much time he has stepped out of the organization, not doing any work. All this information will be available at the end of the day. Similarly, if you look at a monthly employee, end of the month. So then finally everything is processed. Then you have not only one employee, you have many information about many other employees. So this gets processing at the end. So that is why we categorize payroll under a batch processing transaction processing system. Billing. What about billing? Take a simple example like you're going to a grocery store, some shop. You buy many things, right? You don't pay for each and every item separately, right? The person will keep on entering the items in his system or the point of sale system, right? Even in the supermarket, they don't do it per item, right? Per item, they don't give you a separate bill. They accumulate all the things you have bought, and finally the total is calculated. Then only the billing is happening. So that is also a mini batch processing activity that is happening there, right? I hope that was clear. Right. So a comparison of batch processing, I think next we'll be discussing online. That is the right opposite of batch processing. So if you take a batch processing, what happens is as we discussed, we gather accumulated transactions, then that is sent as a batch as an input. You process it, it takes some time, and then you get the output at a later time. Unlike if you compare it with the online transaction processing, everything is kind of instant. You have a same processing system, but you have maybe one or more people or systems connected to this central processing unit, and then what happens is it will immediately give the feedback as needed. So even to the individual ones or to people who are working at the back end, the reaction is instant. So that's what is explained here. OLTP, or we call it real-time processing system, a form of data processing where each transaction is processed immediately without the delay of accumulating transactions into a batch. Consequently, at any time, the data in an online system reflects the current status. This type of processing is essential for businesses that require access to current data, such as airlines, ticket agencies, and stock investment firms. Right? If you look at these industries or these companies, these need to have OLTP systems. Right? Not only stock investment, even I think I have discussed earlier, if you are running an e-commerce website, you need to have a OLTP. It is another form of OLTP where you have to provide instant update of the availability of a product. Let's say many people trying to access or buy the same product. So once you have checked out for one person and another person tries to come and see at the same time when he's on the page, he sees the availability there. At the moment he or she clicks on the second person clicks on the checkout, they should get the information that this has been purchased by another person, right? Or this is not available, something like that. So there are many applications you will see which are already following OLTP model. So in these airline industries, you know how critical these systems would be. So many companies find that OLTP helps them provide faster, more efficient service. One way to add value to the activities in the eyes of the customer. So the key characteristic of OLTP is it is very faster. It is very reactive. Unlike what we discussed in batch processing, you have the time delay. From the moment you do something and you get the output, you have a delay. But here, you don't see that delay. It is very instant. Right. So today, I think another OLTP model, you might have noticed this coronavirus live updates. That you have a website, I think. If you go to that website, whatever the information coming from the different countries updated instantly. And if you have these apps in your phones, you also get those information instantly. So those are OLTP. Even these notification models, which you have in your social media softwares or social media network softwares, you get these notifications and all in a lively manner. So it is following a OLTP model. So increasingly, the need for current data for decision making is driving many organizations to move from batch processing systems to online transaction processing systems when it is economically feasible. So whenever people have sufficient funds and the requirements, the trend is towards OLTP, because batch processing, yes, we can't ignore, but uh, rather than relying more on batch processing, people try to move to this OLTP model. Also, the other benefit is it can help firms provide superior service to customers and other trading partners. So imagine a company, compare two companies who are providing services, same services, one following OLTP model, another one batch. You can see who will benefit more. So this capability also adds value to their products and services, and thus gives them an important way to differentiate themselves from their competitors. So it's all about being a market leader. Right? So there's an added advantage for people who follow the OLTP model. Okay, so here like a very high level view of basic, what do you say, a TPS model, how a TPS model works and how it is generating one output generated from one system serves as an input to another system or another TPS transaction. So let me quickly go through here. Now, if you look at this employee entity, is inserting time cards into the payroll system that is generating paychecks. At the same time, it is generating something called labor costs, which goes as a input transaction into another system called general ledger, which then generates the check, and the check then goes to another TPS called budget. Like that, if you look at the customer does the payment, it goes to accounts receivable, then this goes to general ledger, like that it keeps. So every system you see here in these rectangles, each of these rectangles are handling some kind of transaction and generating output that goes as another transaction to another TPS system, right? So this is the nature of a TPS. So when transactions entered into one system are processed, they create new transactions that flow into another system, right? So what are the objectives we are expecting by using a TPS? So capture, process, and update databases of business data required to support routine business activities, as I mentioned earlier, to support daily activities. Ensure that the data is processed accurately and completely. Right? That is another objective expected. That because, as I told, this TPS is going to serve the data to the higher systems. So only if the data is accurate, processed accurately and in completeness, then only we can take some decisions at the higher level. So that is one of the other objectives, or a very important objective of a TPS, ensuring it is processed accurately and completely. Also, similar to the second one, avoid processing fraudulent transactions. What do you mean fraudulent? Fraudulent means illegal transactions or invalid transactions should be avoided. Like, for example, mistaken, you might have seen, I don't know, like if you have noticed in supermarkets, when they enter something by mistake, they might cut that line, or they mark it as line is void. Sometimes some systems, if they don't have that facility to mark the line as void means invalid, what they do is, let's say they have mistakenly added 100 rupees, they'll put a -100 in the next line. right? That is basically to do this or achieve this one. Avoid processing fraudulent transactions. Also, it should be able to produce timely user responses and reports wherever needed. It should reduce clerical and other unnecessary labor requirements, right? Other manual work should be as much as possible reduced. So when you are implementing, when you are using a TPS, it should reduce extra paperwork, and it should help improve customer service and achieve competitive advantage over people who don't use a TPS. So these are some objectives. So when you are designing a TPS, it can be a point of sale system. So any of these fundamental level systems that you are developing, right? Keep in mind these objectives, right? So these are some of the things that may also be helpful when you are moving towards your third year, when you're designing your own system for your final year project. Most likely it will be falling under some TPS category, unless you go to a management information system. You may have different objectives, but these objectives are very essential and expected from your system. Okay, what are the type of TPS available? So there are many categories, but at this syllabus, for the scope of the syllabus, we'll focus on only 3. So one type is order processing. So the one is covering accounting and purchasing, right? All related to the business activities or the supply chain. Okay. Order processing systems. They are referred to as the lifeblood of the organization. Like that's where it starts. So that's why we put it into this order. Once you finish this one, you can do this, and then you can do the purchasing. So it's like a cycle. So referred to as the lifeblood of the organization. The processing flow begins with the receipt of a customer order. Then the finished product inventory is checked to see if sufficient inventory is on hand to fill the order. If there is sufficient inventory, the customer shipment is planned to meet the customer's desired ship date. So this is the step it is taking place. Then a product pick list is printed at the warehouse from which the order is to be filled on the day the order is to be shipped. Now let's say inventory is available and we have chosen the customer. We have chosen the customer's receipt date, when to give it to the customer. Then the next thing happens is, from the customer order, we take the product pick list and print it the warehouse, because like from which warehouse we are going to take those items. So we generate a product pick list. At the warehouse, workers gather the items needed to fill the order and enter the item identifier. So there will be an ID and the quantity for each item to update the finished product inventory. So now once you have removed the items from the warehouse, you have to update the warehouse. When the order is complete and sent on its way, a customer invoice is created. Invoice means bill, with a copy included in the customer shipment. So this way, so this is like the basic flow of what happens in a order processing system. So this is like talking about a big business scenario. Any order processing system could be thought with these things. So the main things I have bolded in this slide is either the output or the artifacts that are involved in the order processing workflow. Right? Imagine the same idea. You're going to do a food order from your mobile phone. You have developed a system that you need to order food and deliver it to the customer. Simple scenario. So there also you will have a similar structure. You need to finally generate an invoice. Before that, you need to have a product pick list. And before that, you have to check whether the person who is ordering whether in the restaurant that item is there or the food is there. Same thing for a grocery shop. So ordering from home, right? So any kind of ordering model, you can see this workflow will be there. Right? Next, accounting systems. Okay, I don't know whether you can see this in detail. Zoom in. Okay. The accounting systems must track the flow of data related to all the cash flows that affect the organization. Okay, I'll leave it like this. So this is dealing with cash flows, right? Cash flows means the money coming in and out of the company. So you have a system to maintain that. As mentioned earlier, the order processing system generates an invoice. So from the previous step, remember here, we generate a customer invoice. So order processing system generates an invoice for customer orders to include with the shipment. This information is also sent to the accounts receivable system to update the customer's account. So you can see how the accounts receivable is relating to the organization. So in parallel, when you are generating an invoice, you have the customer copy and you have the institute copy, or you say the organization copy. That is what is sent to the accounts receivable so that they can keep track of how much money has to come from which customer, from the customer's account. When the customer pays the invoice, the payment information is also used to update the customer's account. Right? So once person pays the invoice, we update this. The necessary accounting transactions are sent to the general ledger system, which tracks amounts owed from customers and amounts due to vendors. Amounts owed from customers means, so general ledger system is an area in the accounting software where you can see how much has to come yet from customers and how much we are yet to pay for our vendors. Vendors means our, maybe it could be suppliers or people who we need to pay money. As an organization, we may need to pay money to other people. So that is maintained in the general ledger. So it don't think very deep about what is general ledger. It's simply like think of like two Excel sheets. So one sheet will be showing information on how much money to come. Other one will be showing how much money to pay. Simply like that. So similarly, as the purchasing systems generate purchase orders and those items are received, information is sent to the accounts payable system to manage the amounts owed by the company. Data about amounts owed and paid by customers to the company and from the company to vendors and others are sent to the general ledger system. So it will record and report all financial transactions. That's what we do in an accounting system. So that's second category. Third category is purchasing system. So the traditional transaction processing systems that support the purchasing business functions include inventory control, purchase order processing, and accounts payable. So these are the three sub areas that come under purchasing: purchase order processing and receiving. Yes. Employees place purchase order requests in response to shortages identified in inventory control reports. So when do we start purchasing activity? We start purchasing activity when we have insufficient inventory. That means in our warehouse, we don't have enough items to do our business. So that time what people do is they generate a purchase order. So just like how a customer is generating an order from their end for their needs, as a company for our inventory, we generate a purchase order. So purchase order information flows to the receiving system and accounts payable system. So it will go to the receiving system and these two areas, this one, accounts payable, where we have to pay money for that information. A record is created upon receipt of the items ordered when the invoice arrives from the supplier. Now, after we generate this No, okay. This is about, so once you have the purchase order prepared, we will send it to the supplier or the vendor. So then now the vendor uh, comes and delivers, or they are delivering the item. Once we receive the items, we create a record into our system that we have received these items. At the same time, when the invoice means the bill or the receipt that arrives from the supplier, it is matched to the original order and the receiving report. Now you have to do a comparison, because now they will be sending the bill. Okay, now you have to pay this much. Now you have to check whether that is tallying with what we have received from this previous record and also with the purchase order. So these two information are needed to cross-check with the bill, with the invoice that we have received. So it is matched to the original order and the receiving report, and a check is generated if everything is complete and consistent. Otherwise, if there are any discrepancies, that information will be generated separately, and then that report can be used for troubleshooting or negotiating what has gone wrong. Right. So this is how a purchasing system would look like. So this is more suitable for people who are doing or in the retail industry or wholesale business, right? They will have a system, a fundamental data flow of a purchasing system will be having these kind of artifacts. Right. So the benefits of using a TPS. So certain benefits are given here. You develop better relationship with suppliers. So examples are given. Costs are dramatically reduced, right, by using this RFID technology. You reduce unnecessary labor. Everything is detected automatically if you have these kind of systems. And customer loyalty is increased. You develop a good relationship with the customers as well, because customer interaction system to monitor and track each customer interaction with the company. They can even see the status of what has happened. Inventory levels are reduced because you have a lively ordering, lively operation that is happening. You don't have extra cost of maintaining warehouses. Everything is instant. So collaborative planning, forecasting will ensure the right amount of inventories in store. So superior information gathering. Now you have predetermined information that is already there, and you are providing better service to customers. Right? So like that, you can see there are many benefits that you gain by using a TPS. So to tally it with the objectives we discussed earlier, TPS can support organization goals such as reducing overall costs, increasing the productivity, quality, and customer satisfaction, and running more efficient and effective operations. Up to now, any questions? Any questions up to now? Okay, I assume no questions. Was it clear? Anything you have to ask about TPS? Do you have any kind of example in your mind which you need to say, which you need to clarify whether this would fall under TPS or not? You can ask me. Later, after learning the other type of information systems such as MIS, DSS, and expert systems, after covering all those, we'll discuss some examples and just do a kind of a kindergarten practice where I mention a system. You will categorize them, whether it is MIS, whether it is a TPS, whether it is a DSS. But before going to that point, you can ask if there are any doubts in your mind about, like, you have some example in your mind and you want to clarify whether it is a TPS or not. So imagine let's say you're going to develop a timetable management system. That is also TPS for a school, for a nursery, maybe staff scheduling system. It's a TPS, right? Because fundamental entries are there. Once you start adding some decision-making capabilities, that TPS gets converted into a DSS. Okay. Okay, let me continue further. No questions. Okay, so transaction processing systems for entrepreneurs and SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. That's the abbreviation of small and medium-sized is called small and medium-sized enterprises is called SME. So generally, how do you understand what is an SME? How do you categorize whether this company is a SME or not? So SME is legally independent enterprise with no more than 500 employees. For such an organization, we can categorize it as small, medium-sized enterprise. Yesterday I was in a discussion, there was another definition where a person mentioned SMEs in Sri Lanka. There is a benchmark to identify whether this organization is a SME or not is by looking at the annual turnover. So if the annual turnover is between 1 million to 2 million, we categorize that as a SME. That's another way of doing. So in Sri Lanka, that's how they categorize a SME, it seems. So annual income means that, at the year end, they have a turnover of 1 million to 2 million. So that's 10 lakhs to 20 lakhs rupees, right? So that is another way of doing, but generally we'll go with this definition. So if there's a company less than 500, we call it as a small medium enterprise. So integrated transaction processing systems for SMEs are typically easy to install and operate and usually have a low total cost of ownership with an initial cost of a few hundred to a few $1,000s. Such solutions are highly attractive to firms that have outgrown their current software but cannot afford a complex, high-end integrated system solution. Okay. What are they saying here? Integrated TPS for SMEs are typically easy to install. When you say integrated means when you have many things together, many operations together, such kind of TPS systems are affordable for SMEs because of the low total cost of ownership, and they don't have to spend much money for an integrated TPS. And also for startup companies, newly startup companies, such kind of integrated TPSs are very attractive rather than going for a high-end ERP system. ERPs are generally very, very expensive. So rather than going for very expensive ERP systems, these organizations can think of purchasing integrated transaction processing system. That means there will be separate small modules relating to their functional area integrated into one system. So it may be in one machine or a couple of machines where 1 or 2 employees can operate and look over all their activities. Right. So this is the main activities that take place in a TPS. Starting from data collection, where we capture data, original data, then Once we capture the data, we have to do data editing, that is basically to check or verify. So by verifying, if we categorize it as bad data, we have to do a data correction activity, which in turn starts the cycle again. Or else if it is good to go, you go further into processing the data, because once you verify whether it is correct, then only you start processing. So processing means either it could be calculations or any other thing that is going to generate some output. So once the output is generated, you can store the data. So data storage happens. So through data storage, you either can generate some reports later or maybe something instantly, document production. So the main activities, main 6 activities are data collection, data editing, data correction, data processing, data storage, document production. So you will have to remember this cycle. This is known as the transaction processing cycle. So transaction processing activities are needed to capture and process data, or the operations of a business would grind to a halt. If these activities are not there, what will happen is a business would grind to a halt. Grind to a halt means a business will, stop. A business will come to a shutdown. So these activities are very important in a TPS. If you are designing system, keep in mind these components are inbuilt into your TPS systems. So that's why we are learning this here. So there are many past paper questions based on these activities. So now in the next set of slides, we'll discuss in further each of these activities in detail. So that cycle, this cyclic activity is known as transaction processing cycle. The process of data collection, data editing, data correction, data processing, data storage, and document production, all 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is known as transaction processing cycle. First one, data collection. Capturing and gathering all data necessary to complete the processing of transactions is called data collection. So data collection can happen in 2 ways, either manual or automated. So manual means you involve the human beings to do the input. So handwritten sales orders or inventory update forms. So that is one way of collecting data. The other one is through tools, automated. So using scanners or point of sale, these barcode readers, devices, or maybe some terminals. So data collection begins with a transaction and results in data that serves as input to the TPS. Right? So how data collection begins with a transaction. That means maybe a custom order is starting and results in data that serves as input to the TPS. So when we do this data collection, mostly we try to do it in an automated way. So there is something called source data automation. So what is this? Capturing data at its source and recording it accurately in a timely fashion with minimal manual effort and in an electronic or digital form so that it can be directly entered into the computer. Each of these highlighted words are the key points you need to remember in this definition. And that is what makes the definition. That's why I have given it in different colors. Capturing data at its source, number 1. Recording it accurately, number 2. Timely, 3. With minimal manual effort, that is number 4. In electronic or digital, so that's number 5. So that it can be directly entered into the computer. That's number 6, point number 6. So this is called source data automation. So simply to understand, data collection happening automatically. So example would be where source data automation is taking place in your supermarket. in a supermarket, a simple activity, what the cashier does is, they take your item, say it's a chili packet or something, they have the uh, universal product code, what is that called, UPC, that barcode is there. You place it in, he or she will place it in front of the barcode scanner, and it captures the data. What does it do? You just think of that scenario when you're placing that barcode in front of the scanner, is capturing the data from that source, then immediately it is recording it, timely, minimal manual effort. What is the minimal manual effort? You just have to hold the packet there, right? And then it is sending it in electronic or digital form, so it directly goes into the computer. So that's the simplest way to understand it. That's a very typical example, right? Source data automation. So that same scenario is explained what happens behind the scenes also. So take the point of sale example, as I mentioned. So what happens is you use the scanner or maybe a RFID chip even in the inventory house, if that is the case. So you point the UPC, that is the universal product code, maybe the quantity, date, time, goes into the POS system. So behind the scenes, what happens is items database is updated, then some information is updated to the purchases database and also to the inventory database. And finally, a output is generated as the bill, customer's receipt. Then once it goes here, this information, once this is updated, this goes into the higher level decision-making systems and generating certain other reports, right? So behind the scenes of a point of sale, this is what happens. You may have one or more databases that are responsible for some activity, and those get updated instantly. Everything happens instantly, real time. Second one, after data collection, now you have to edit. You have to check whether it is correct or complete. So checking data for validity and completeness to detect any problems. Example, when you're entering quantity and cost, it must be numeric and names must be alphabetic. Otherwise, it is invalid data. Often the codes associated with an individual transaction are edited against a database containing valid codes. If any code entered is not present in the database, the transaction is rejected. So you might have noticed in the point of sale systems, sometimes they keep on scanning. It gives an error message always, invalid code, item not found. So that is activity of TPS activity of data editing, right? So hereafter, when you are going and encountering a point of sale system, these 6 activities should come to your mind. This is what is happening now. This is the first activity. This is the second activity happening now. So that's how you have to, learn these things in real life. I mean, memorizing is one thing, but you have to memorize it with real world examples. Right? Then it's much more easier to understand. Right. So once the validity is checked, you have to do data correction. For example, if there is something wrong, you have to correct the user. You have to correct the person who is using the system. So the system should also provide error messages that alert those responsible for doing the previous step, the editing the data. So error messages must specify the problem, so proper corrections can be made, because by just giving the error message is not enough. You have to also suggest. The error message should also suggest. It should be in a way, it should be having a language where it should say, okay, now you have to do this to make this correct, or this is what is the problem. So it should point out. Otherwise, you will end up in the same cycle. There are some error messages you might have seen in some badly designed systems. The error message doesn't help you further. Now, there are some you will learn in, I think, in your second year, a subject called user interface design. Under that, you will learn about this interface behavior. So sometimes, I have seen some messages where it will say, it will throw the message, but the message is a system unknown error. So what the hell is unknown error? Unknown error means you don't know what is the error, and system also doesn't know what is the error. I mean, it shouldn't be in that way. Either it should say, okay, this is the error code, or this is the problem that has happened, because always it's possible to point out what the error is. So you have to give a friendly error message. So that is what we do in data correction. So data correction involves re-entering data that was not typed or scanned properly. A scanned UPC code must match a code in a master table of valid UPCs. So what is UPC? The universal product code. So as I mentioned, in each of these items you have that barcodes appearing now. So those are called universal product codes. If you type Google and see, you will get an idea what is a UPC code, or you already know that. So when you're scanning, the UPC code must match the master table of valid UPCs that are already available in the system. If the code is misread or does not exist in the database or the table, the checkout clerk is given an instruction to rescan the item or type the information manually. So this is what data correction should do. So you correct the data, now you proceed further, performing the calculations and other data transformations related to business transactions. This can include classifying data, sorting data into categories, performing calculations, summarizing results, storing data in the organization database for further processing. Right? All these things can be part of data processing. Okay. You might have noticed now, if they scan some items, they don't have if the code is not clear, what they do is they go to a search window where they type the first 2-3 letters of the item. Then it will list out. So that is called sorting, and it will also summarize. Okay, for example, if it is from let's say one brand, let's say Kist. So you have, when you type Kist, it will list out, okay, Kist tomato sauce, Kist juice, that and this, it will list out. So through that they can easily sort out, and so that is called data processing. So once you come out of this data correction step, you move towards the data processing, and also once the correct data is available, you can even do the calculations, like you can finalize the processing and store the data into the organization's database. So in a payroll TPS, payroll means that employee salary stuff. For example, data processing includes multiplying an employee's hours worked by the hourly pay rate. Overtime pay, federal and state tax withholdings and deductions are also calculated. You know this, in our terms, we call that EPF, ETF. So when you are doing the salary calculation, even the EPF, ETF deductions can be automatically done if you have implemented that logic. So that's called data processing. Then data storage is the next activity. It involves updating one or more databases with new transactions. After being updated, this data can be further processed by other systems so that it is available for management reporting and decision making at the high levels. Thus, although transaction databases can be considered a byproduct of transaction processing, they can significantly affect nearly all other information systems and decision making processes within an organization. So they are talking transaction databases can also be a byproduct of transaction processing. As you do transaction processing, this database can be instantly updated. But what is important to notice is this storage information, the data we store, is going to affect many other activities in the organization. So mostly for the decision making processes, this has a major impact. So that's one of the activities. Then the final activity, you are able to generate something out of what you have stored. Right? So either it could be documents, reports in hard copy, soft copy, right? Anything is possible. So printed paychecks are copy documents produced by a payroll TPS. An outstanding balance report for invoices might be an electronic report displayed by an accounts receivable TPS. So different types of things can be produced as per needed. That is document production activity. Right. Now this is another viewpoint from your second reference book, the same transaction processing cycle which we discussed. So can somebody quickly tell what are the activities, or somebody can type under this, what are the activities in a TPS? Quickly. So if you have followed the lecture, you will answer. What are the 6 activities in a TPS, or what are the activities in a transaction processing cycle, starting from? Any volunteer? Data collection, yes. Next, data editing. You edit the data. Then after editing, what do you do? So editing is basically checking completeness. You do the corrections, yes. So you say whether it is, so after editing, if it is bad, you do data correction. If it is good, what do you do? Forgot. Others? After correction, you don't go to storage. After correction, you have to manipulation or data processing. Yes, you have to process the data. Exactly. After processing only, you have to store the data. Data storage, the fifth one. So once you have stored data, everything is available on the database. So what you can do, final step. Produce documents. Yeah, produce documents. So documents can be produced in either soft copy or hard copy. Right. Good. So alternative view is the same transaction processing cycle given as 5 main activities or five areas. So they are categorizing data entry. This is more likely the data collection part. Transaction processing, they categorize either it happens as batch or real time, or batch or online. So this can be our data, what do you say? More likely our data editing, data correction, and processing together. Then you have document generation. Apart from that, you have database maintenance and inquiry processing, right? So they gave the order like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So let's see what is database maintenance. An organization's databases must be updated by its transaction processing systems so that they are always correct and up to date. So therefore, transaction processing systems serve to assist in maintaining the corporate databases of an organization to reflect changes resulting from day-to-day business transactions. So you can see it's more related to the data editing and data correction activity in the previous cycle. Similarly, if you look at inquiry processing, Many transaction processing systems allow you to use the internet, intranets, extranets, and web browsers or database management query languages to make inquiries and receive responses concerning the results of transaction processing activity. So this is more related to either this number 4 and uh, like auditing purposes, like if you want to see what has happened in the system. So document and report generation is for the business purpose. Inquiry processing might be something beyond that, like for the technical purposes, like to see whether, so as I mentioned, the most correct term would be auditing, technical audits, to see if any fraudulent activity has taken place. So those kind of activities we do it under inquiry process. So generally, you don't have to memorize this cycle much. The previous cycle is the most comprehensive view that is directly related to the activities of a TPS. So data collection, data editing, data correction, data processing, data storage, and report document generation. Okay, so that's about it. So what we learned was what is a transaction and what is a TPS. Objectives of a TPS we learned, so many objectives, many benefits we discussed. Then we saw the comparison between batch processing and OLTP. So OLTP is also known as real-time processing systems. You should know some examples under each category, which I have not discussed in detail here. And we discussed the different types of TPS, such as order processing, accounting, and purchasing. Finally, we discussed about the transaction processing activities. So this is all you will get under TPS. So there are different type of questions, sentence type questions. So you can refer to the past papers and see how you can cover these areas. Any questions you can ask?